You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 46th episode of Reanimated, the podcast about all things zombie. My name is Stuart Tiffin, and joining me out in the eastern part of the United States is my invincible co-host, H.A. Conrad. How's it going this morning, H.A.?
Going well. Cannot complain. What's up, Mr. Tiffin?
Pretty jazzed about our review today. We're going to be talking about the movie The Battery, a very small release direct to, not video, I guess, but DVD.
Well, and you can buy it online too. So I would say, digitally too.
Yeah, I think in the literature I've been reading, they talk about it being released direct to DVD, but honestly, that seems kind of an anachronistic thing nowadays when online is really the way to go. Either way, so that's what we'll be reviewing. We also got some zombie news, and we'll be doing all this thanks to our good buddies over there at Squarespace.
Yay! Squarespace!
And H.A. Conrad being the biggest cheerleader of Squarespace around. They're the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own website. And we've hosted our podcasts and our show notes and that website on their platform, and it's pretty handy. I'm not gonna lie. If people want to check it out, we've got an offer code. You enter zombie when checking out with your first purchase, and you'll get a 10% discount. That's the truth.
Yes, it is. We would make that up.
We spin truths here at Reanimated Podcast. It's all true all the time. That's our motto.
Except when I sometimes lie. But, that's not often.
There's also a dollop of pure fallacy and lies. But yeah, so let's dig into our zombie news, because there are a couple of pretty good tidbits out there this week. First up, not totally zombie related, however, it is Reanimated related. And that's Wired magazine had a cool article this week about reviving the dead and kind of the history of it. And it was basically the title. It's a listicle, which is weird for Wired to do, but they did one. And so it's 9 things to know about reviving the recently dead. First up was, be glad that you didn't die in the 18th century, because methods for resuscitation back then were pretty bizarre. What out of these was your favorite and most bizarre?
What, in terms of reviving the dead then?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I know that they would... I don't want to get into my favorite. I do think that the most disgusting was blowing tobacco smoke into the rectum.
Yeah, and yet, I was surprised to see that Wired actually gave that one a little bit of like backup. They were like, yeah, because there's epinephrine in tobacco smoke, and so by blowing it into a mucous membrane, blah blah blah, you're actually giving them, I don't know how many cc's of epi, but it could work. So guys, if you're ever out there and you're like, oh, we just don't have that epinephrine, do the old sphincter smoke blow technique.
Yeah, I think not. Anyway.
And I like the one that was like, put a recently drowned person on the back of a horse, like, fold them over the saddle and have it run up and down the street, because that will almost be like an analog for CPR. That was pretty cool. However, I guess, the odds of it actually working, pretty slim. But apparently the odds of CPR working in general, much less than we as television audiences might be led to believe. Something around 20 or 30%, I think this article says, is that the actual survival statistics for CPR recipients.
Well, and that's actually, I don't know. I have to see where exactly they got their facts, because I had to, as part of my work, had to take CPR and AED training.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those odds are even that high because of if an AED is present, and without it, I think it's even lower than that.
Yeah.
And that has to be within very quickly after a person goes down. So it's always interesting. And because I was trained on this, I did notice at my gym, there's this note in the cardio room, which is quite honestly, the most likely place if somebody's going to have some sort of event at a gym, it's probably going to be in the cardio room. And they're like, go to the front desk and get the AED, which is like, well, that would probably be at least 5 minutes in either direction. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's sort of one of those things. It's like, shouldn't you guys just have one in the cardio room, in the weight room? I don't know, just a minor thing. But that being said, the AED now is like when you use it, it gives you direction. So even if you're not trained in it, you can probably figure it out, which
Yeah.
is, you know, generally the issue is that people are scared to use it, but it gives you like like instructions.
They're
Um,
super advanced now. Yeah, and we have one in the building where I live, and we were all trained on it, and it just talks you through the process.
mhm.
As long as you put the contacts in the right place, which there are maps, like illustrations to show you where they go. My biggest problem with CPR is like, yeah, I went through the whole training course. I've gone through CPR training so many times, but I never get to practice it. So it's one of these things that I'm like, well, I guess I should probably have a refresher like every year.
Well, you're supposed to, I think.
I've got
So,
this card in my wallet that says I'm good to go, but I'd rather get some more training.
well, and now actually to make it, they change the guidelines up every year. Now they're saying like you just need to keep pumping the chest as opposed to giving people breaths because
Hmm.
that's, the biggest thing is to keep the blood pumping. But yeah, it's such a weird thing. I think that everybody has this idea that it's such an easy thing to do, and I mean, yes, your chances are much higher if you do this, but they're not as high as I think.
Well, let's talk about a couple of the other things that the Wired article was going into, and some of these were super interesting. Uh, but basically, if you die, try to die in a really cold place because your cells will basically they will not die as fast. Is that kind of what you get out of it? It's like they kind of go a little bit what's the word?
They go into stasis
A
basically.
little bit, yeah. Everything slows down. Metabolic needs are reduced, and so if you're already like in the Arctic having a cardiac event um, or drowning, it'll be a little easier to revive you. But I wouldn't still put any bets on full brain function if you've been out for as long as. This one woman they cite a Swedish woman survived after 80 minutes trapped under the ice in a frozen stream. That's bananas. Otherwise, try to go die in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where they are doing clinical trials where for people who they need to resuscitate, they basically replace all of their blood with a really really cold saline solution to basically put the same effect on the recently dead in hopes of reviving them, which is also kind of completely insane.
Well, it is, except, that's the damage that's done is done. They're basically trying to reduce as much damage as possible.
Yes, I
And
I think it's just that anytime I read the words replace all of the blood with X, Y, or Z, I think
yeah.
that's kind of crazy.
But I mean, the fact that it's even there is interesting. So I think we'll see more things in the future.
Yeah.
But they do point out that some of the problems with this, and I do think that this is, you're still going to have tissue damage with that kind of thing, and it is extraordinarily costly. So in many cases, people aren't necessarily being revived, but they might be like revived to a heartbeat state, but maybe not fully regain consciousness, and in which case they're just on life support, and it's just, as they say, prolonging the death process as opposed to bringing them back to life. Um, so that's an interesting
Yeah.
point.
That was kind of like the big downer of the article was that yeah, a lot of people end up vegetables after they're revived. So don't get your hopes up. That's kind of like actually the theme of the article in a way, with the exception of hey, maybe you can just replace all your blood with ice cold saline solution, but still don't get your hopes up.
Mm.
And they also throw a wrench in the cryonics uh, department, saying like, yeah, it's like way too much money, and you could probably spend that money on doing something else, such as replacing all your blood.
Mm. But
So,
that said, some of these methods, I know that with stroke victims, they do cool them down to prevent more damage, and they find that there is less damage and a faster recovery if they're able to get them into a hospital quickly or administer this in the ambulance on the way over. So they are making strides, but it's just not quite, you know,
mhm.
quite there yet.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's a pretty interesting article. We'll have a link to it. You can see the other 6 things or so that you should know about reviving the recently deceased. Hibernation makes an appearance, and yeah. But moving on, what else we got going on here today? Oh, one of our massive, selection of audience listeners forwarded this actually on Twitter a little while ago, but I've just not been putting it in the show notes. It's a YouTube video called "The Dancing Dead," which is actually also kind of like a short.
It was fun.
And we'll just let our listeners take a look at that. We'll throw it in the show notes, and it's kind of a humorous take on zombie survival in the barrio and Michael Jackson dance moves.
Well, and, Michael Jackson, I would say inspired idea, no?
It appeared to be, yeah.
I was pretty excited to see the trailer that I put up as the next item, which was the first trailer we've seen so far for Z Nation on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it premieres this September, I believe. Did you take a peek at it?
I did. Were you really excited after watching it?
No, I was just excited to see that they're actually moving forward.
Yeah.
with
I was very excited to see that, like, yeah, it's coming together. It's not just like a list of names and, a location. Harold Perrineau has some crazy scars on his face. I did not know that DJ Qualls was going to be in this, and I have to admit that that is not a good thing.
What? I think he's awesome. What are you talking about?
I don't think he's ever been that good an actor. He's just kind of been interesting looking, and that's why he gets cast.
Well, maybe, but I think he's a lot of fun. You and I are gonna have to agree to disagree on this point.
Well, I'm willing to see how he does, but I was, just in terms of like, oh, that's DJ Qualls. Okay.
The trailer itself, yeah, I agree with you. It wasn't too exciting per se, but I was just glad to see that there was more than just articles talking about it. So
they're definitely moving forward. What about the babies?
Oh, zombie babies. There was one. Creepy.
They're leading out the gate with Zombaby.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little worried about that, but maybe it's part of the sense of humor about it. I got a little bit of tongue-in-cheek from this trailer. Did you not?
Yeah, and that's what some of the other critics are saying too, that this is not going to be the deadpan Walking Dead approach. These guys are going to bring more of that Sharknado aesthetic to it. Which, by the way, I tried to watch Sharknado after we're talking about this show and how these guys were the producers of that. The guys behind this show were the producers of that film. That is a really bad movie.
It's supposed to be bad. It's called Sharknado.
But no, I mean, it's not good. It is not good. Not well done.
Well, it's not supposed to be. Have you ever watched any of the sci-fi films? Come on.
Yeah, and I like them when they're good, and when they're not good, I do not like them.
Anyway, I thought it was hilarious and terrible, but hilarious. Let's see. There was also a little bit of it was kind of a silly little article in Washington Post just about economic recovery after a zombie apocalypse, which was interesting.
I thought it was a great idea for an article, but
they didn't do what I wanted them to do with it. They just kind of like went off spouting crazy stuff. So
it also felt like he was pushing or trying to sell his book.
Yeah, exactly. So I was hoping it would be something more than it was, and then it kind of fell flat. He would have done much better to do a more interesting article and not try to link it to whatever he's trying to plug.
And there was a part in here, and correct me if I'm wrong, HA, where he's talking about zombie exploding munitions made in Hawaii from World War Z, the book. And I don't remember that. I remember the Lobo, and I remember like a flechette gun. I feel
that was not in the book. I don't know what he's talking about there, and I wanted to actually mention that.
Because that seems like that's pretty basic shit. If you're getting into the, hey, we're going to talk about zombies like they're real and write a book about how to recreate your economy, you should get your facts right if you're going to refer to other material from that world.
I wonder, because he was specifically mentioning World War Z, right?
A bunch of times, yeah. But that in that case, I thought that he was
I mean,
making shit up.
because the only thing that I remember, and maybe like granted, I have not read World War Z in a bit, but the only place where I remember them talking about munitions was in the Battle of Yonkers, and then in some of the other ones where it isn't actually successful.
Well, no, later on when they like retake, they start their offensive. I mean, you and I talked
Well,
about this when we first started the podcast. It was one of our earlier shows, but there was definitely a lot of treatment about these high resource to kill ratio weapons, and I just don't think anything that explodes would be in Max Brooks' repertoire.
right. Because yeah. Anyway, but all that aside, it was interesting that he was trying to weave that in, but he did do it unsuccessfully. The next article was it was actually about life after Beth, and the only thing I thought was interesting about this, and I guess I was unaware, is that this particular script that Jeff Banya had written has basically been sort of floating around for something like 12 years. So when he was making this film and starting to cast in whatever, all the people that he had originally thought would be great people in it are now either too old or too established to have been in it.
Yeah, well, he looks like he's found another kind of young, not totally well-known actor for the lead male.
No, he has. It was just an interesting thought because, you just kind of wonder how much it takes to, and I thought in line with what we're reviewing today, just talking about Hollywood as opposed to people basically doing a Kickstarter or funding their own independent films. It was just an interesting thing. The fact that this thing has been out there for so long just to get it looked at, just to get it made. Like, I think it's got to be tough not to lose to lose hope, that your script is going to get made. So
I think that, I mean, who the hell knows really how Hollywood works, but there was an article even this morning that I saw from The Guardian. Christina Hendricks, who is Joan on Mad Men and was, I forget her name in Firefly, but she had a recurring role in Firefly too.
Mrs. Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, Mrs. Mal. She got let go by her agency when she accepted the job to be on Mad Men. And so I feel like there's just a lot of gambles and risk taking that you have to do when you're in this industry. That it's like any investment. You just don't really know exactly where it's going. Maybe it'll be Showgirls. Maybe it'll be, I don't know what an analog to Showgirls is. That was just the worst film ever.
That was the worst film ever.
Maybe even worse than Sharknado. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, hey, but Sharknado was bad, but look at how much money they made on that. Sorry, but they were very successful with that. They made it for very little and made a lot of money, and they made it back in insane amounts, hand over fist.
Fair enough. I don't think it's really kickstarted any of the actors' careers from that film. John Hurt, though, I think is actually, I don't even know why he was in that movie. He's a good actor.
I think honestly, they just had a lot of fun making it, and it was just silly. So, and there was a little bit of Walking Dead news. I decided not to include the article that included some spoilers about Beth, just because I think we're going to get into Walking Dead stuff later, and I don't want to spoil too much. But there was an article that basically showed the different, the new zombies, so to speak, for the next season, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Did you not want to mention, did we talk about how Jeff Baina is Aubrey Plaza's boyfriend?
We didn't, but I guess we could.
I mean, that's kind of a big deal, don't you think?
I think it happens in Hollywood.
Okay.
I don't think that that's too shocking. Do you?
I think it's weird.
Why?
Well, first of all, she is apparently the driving force behind why that movie's getting made. And secondly, he had to direct his girlfriend in a movie, and that's he says that it actually it was good for them or something. I just think it's noteworthy.
I think it happens more than you think.
So I would like to hear when you think it's happening. Like what's another example of this?
What's her name? Seven of Nine. That would Jerry Ryan dated one of the writers and producers of Star Trek. Like it happens quite often. I don't think you always hear about it. I think it's something that's not really a big deal.
Okay, then.
Sorry. I want to know why you think it's a big deal.
Just trying to make conversation.
I think I think we've uncovered some deep-seated issues, Stuart.
I work with my wife every day, and I have for years. It's just it's different when I think you have a director-directed thing going on with a relationship.
You know what though? I think if you're at the level where you're making films and stuff, you have to be professional about it. I don't know. I don't think that it poses that much of an issue. But I'm not in the business, so I can't really speak from a first person point of view. Um, but yeah, on to the zombies of The Walking Dead. What did you think of some of the makeup?
I think that it's good that somebody's pointing out that there has been an evolution in the way that the undead look in the show. I,
Mm-hmm.
th- I, we keep talking about the Walking Dead Beyond where we've reviewed, but like up to the end of season 2 where we reviewed it, I think it's still less than a year has passed since it all went to hell, but
Right.
where the show is now, it's a couple of years. I
Mm-hmm.
think not more than like 2 or 3, but it's been a couple of years. And so what you would expect is, and depends on your zombie canon and how you're approaching, modeling your zombies. But a couple of years after death, most corpses are showing extreme decomposition slash shouldn't be much there anymore. And so the show has made an attempt to show decomp on their zombies, but probably not to the extent that maybe they should.
Yeah, but I mean, you can also assume that some zombies are still being made. It's
Yes,
not like so there's a lot of little sort of outs that they can have, but I think it's good that they're at least even thinking about that.
absolutely.
So that's kind of cool. I just thought it was an interesting little.
And it's yeah, visually it's really cool to see, like you go from the little girl at the gas station who does look very fresh, as it were,
Hmm.
to these like sunken eye socket, missing lots of their face zombies of the last couple seasons.
Yeah. But are you ready to talk about what we're here to talk about today?
Super excited and ready to talk about The Battery, the 2012 released direct to the internet slash DVD, filmed in 15 days for $6,000, and has a lot of repeat names in the cast list.
Yes, it does.
The casting
but
crew.
but one thing I will say, $6,000, and I did a little bit more research on this because I was like, okay, they can't like just from an advertising and marketing point of view. I was like, is it just the making of the movie that costs that much? And the director did confirm that it was, and the director was Jeremy Gardner, and he also was in it, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, a lot. And anyway, he confirmed that it was $6,000 to get it basically in the can. And the majority of that money was donated by friends and supporters in smaller amounts, so a la Kickstarter. Not quite the same, but like same idea.
I,
Um,
I assume a lot of this came from, yeah, you can, if you watch the credits, the executive producers list is quite lengthy and includes
yes,
a lot of family names. And
yes,
so,
which
yeah,
is that but he did. Hang on, I think he did an interview with Ain't It Cool News, where he talks a little bit about it. But I think that this is just one of those really nice things about the way technology has moved forward. So this looks to me like it was shot on a 5D and basically shot in a very short amount of time, wandering around Connecticut. There's some very familiar places here to me that I've actually been to, at Kent State Park, the covered bridge and all of that, and a lot of the waterfall scenes are all in a little state park near Southbury, Connecticut. But the fact that they were able to do this, and I thought it looked pretty good. What did you think?
Oh yeah, I mean overall, you want me to give you my overall impressions, or
Yeah.
just the way that the cinematography was?
Yeah, overall impressions, for $6,000. And what I was kind of thinking about is just sort of, independent films in general, but also when you're pitting this against some of the really big budget zombie films, and not just zombie films, but films in general, like horror films and all of that. I really thought that it looked great. And I thought that they did a great job giving it that feel and that look.
Yeah, I think all the cinematography was really good. The sound sometimes was a little bit off, in terms of, like, I'm sure they didn't have a boom mic, or if they did, it was difficult in some scenes where one of them was in the car and the other one was out of the car, to always have their voices come through very clearly. But for the most part, and if I can be a little bit negative up front, the zombies were not great, but
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think the zombies were really the focus. I
they
think they were.
absolutely weren't. But they're still a part of the film, and so it's worth pointing out. Like, yeah, they were not super well. Some of them were well made up, but most of them were not. And honestly, they weren't very well portrayed, in my opinion. But the genre has grown to the extent that you can just say, okay, these are zombies, and then the audience is going to put a lot of that projection onto them anyway. So you don't even have to portray them, a la Dawn of the Dead. You can just be like, these are zombies, just imagine it, and then we're going to do the rest.
Right. And I mean, I think a lot more was focused on the setting and the journey that the two main characters make, and specifically their relationship. And the zombies were kind of part of that, but they were not the main focus. Um, so in any case, I think that it's great that they were able to do this. They submitted it to a bunch of festivals, and they got, I mean, they really won a bunch of awards, by some of the independent films festivals in terms of, like, like Telluride, and they won, like, all their accolades are on the main website for this film, so you can check it out yourself. But I mean, pretty impressive for a little film. Um, and then a lot of really excellent reviews from the usual suspects, like Fangoria and, let's see what else, Dread Central and that kind of thing. But I am curious. I'm curious what your thoughts were, Stuart.
I enjoyed it. I think it was. I was tempted to just kind of label it like, oh, hipster zombie movie, but it's not even that. It's just a really nice, really stripped down, very spare and kind of basic. Not to use that word pejoratively. Movie, following these two guys and their story, and the soundtrack is done in a way that it kind of fits in with the story too. I think that like a lot of movies, especially a movie like this that has a soundtrack, can sometimes pull you out of the suspension of disbelief, kind of break your immersion. But because it's all done through Mickey and his headphones, I think that really keeps you in it, and at the same time injects a lot of much needed musical interludes, because it is so spare. They have a lot of, like, two guys sitting in a room not talking scenes.
Yeah. But I also think that the headphone piece and that specific um so basically one of the characters, Mickey, he has his little Walkman or disc player, whatever it is. And he uses this a lot, and he's basically kind of trying to hide out from the realities, and I think that that was a good use of that. And as you point out, it broke up the film and a lot of these sort of awkward moments between the two that would have felt, I think, a lot more trying had the music not been there. Definitely.
Yeah.
But, I also feel like their interactions together, it was a little, to me, it was a little bit slow getting started, but you kind of see why it was as you get further into the film. They're really trying to build up the relationship between the two main characters, Mickey and Ben, and it's um, it's really it's used as a tool. The way that this is filmed, I do think that it's worth watching, definitely. Um, and I don't know, do you want to get into the big spoiler stuff or no?
Yeah, we can. I think we can just talk about the whole thing. It's not like we have a history of not doing spoilers.
I know. I just like to give people a heads up before we really go there.
Yeah.
It's a spoiler alert.
But I don't necessarily want to step through it, but I do want to just talk about elements of it, if that's cool.
Yeah. One of the there were and there's it's a serious film certainly, but there is a lot of levity. Basically, the crux of this story is surrounding these two characters, Ben and Mickey, and they are two baseball players that have been basically caught in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and there are things that happened to them before we have come to see them that affect how they interact with each other. But right now, they're focused on survival and figuring out the next steps. And each of them have very different ideas of how to do it. One, I think, is much more of an ostrich, and the other is much more of a survivor.
Yeah. Did you know what a battery was before you watched this movie?
No, no, I did not.
I don't know if we're just not baseball people, but I was like, oh, the battery. It's going to be about hitting people with a bat. Actually, no. It's about the relationship between a pitcher and a catcher. And I did not know that. So thanks, the battery. You taught me a thing.
Yes, I had no idea.
And
Um,
the fact
and
that Ben was the starting catcher and Mickey was like a second or third string bullpen pitcher was also very telling about their relationship too.
Yeah, and it's I like baseball and I've watched baseball, and I just had never really heard that before, and I also think that it's an interesting when you first start on the film, you don't realize that they're actual ball players. You just kind of think they're two guys that are kind of talking smack to each other and playing catch because for the heck of it. Or at
Yeah.
least that was my impression. Like they're just trying to break up time. And then as the film goes on and you hear a little bit more about them, it's like, oh, very different relationship. Um,
They both seem to carry like stupid baseball stuff with them though. I mean, I can understand the mitts and the ball just to break up the monotony. Ben has his catcher's mask, which I guess could be useful fighting zombies, but then I think Mickey has his cleats on the back of his rug. I'm like, what are those going to do for you? I'm pretty sure those are not useful shoes.
yeah, but Mickey as the character is the one that's really not willing to let go of stuff. I get the sense that Ben carries his stuff because he thinks it's useful.
Yeah.
And I feel like Mickey carries his stuff because he just doesn't want to let go. Similar to the Walkman and the disc player and stuff.
Yeah. He actually doesn't even say the word zombie until, and they make a big deal about it until pretty close to the end of the movie. Like
Yep.
he's doesn't want to acknowledge that.
Yeah. And there's definitely there's also a good injection of humor, but not humor just to throw it in there. Just well, I guess one of the scenes I found particularly humorous, and maybe I'm a sick but there is one scene where Mickey is in the car and some zombie chick comes up and he takes the opportunity to masturbate because her breasts are all pressed up against the glass. And there was like this, you're kind of like, what is he doing? And then you're like, oh, oh my God, really? And there's this great thing where Ben kind of comes upon this scene, takes her out, and then just can't stop laughing. Which I thought it was a well done, silly scene that broke up the more serious parts of the film.
It's pretty messed up, honestly. And then I did like the fact that Ben's like, "Oh my God, I can't breathe. I gotta go. I'm gonna let you finish. You just take care of what you gotta do."
Right. No, but I mean, and you feel you're laughing, but it's also like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
like, what have you been reduced to, man? But so there's things like that, and then there's like the more dark parts of their relationship, which, Mickey has been avoiding the reality of this stuff for a very long time. He's continually looking for places to stay, and Ben is very much like, no, we don't stay. We don't stay inside the house. We keep moving. And Mickey just wants to basically play house and pretend that nothing's going on. And to help him out of that, do you agree with what Ben did?
No, but then Mickey's being irrational, so like he's refusing to help, like even guard. I mean,
Well, right. No.
Ben has to take his headphones away from him, which is like a big deal, because all he does is listen to music and like kind of lay down while Ben is clearing houses and clearing cars, and that's not okay. Like he's basically a liability, and that's what Ben explains to him. But I love the way that the movie dealt with that whole thing, because it's one of the things as an audience, as a zombie savvy audience, you're like, you can't wear headphones in a zombie apocalypse. That's crazy. And that's what Ben keeps saying over and over again.
Yeah, and it was sort of, for me, it was a relief when Ben actually truly confronted him about the headphones, and then actually was basically telling Mickey, look, like, this is the deal. We've got to deal with it, and whatever. And so, yeah, I think it was pretty awful when he releases a zombie into Mickey's room while he's sleeping, no less. But I also think that once that hurdle was reached and Mickey took out the zombie, that their relationship changed for the better.
Yeah, I mean, one thing in Mickey's favor here, because of the zombie released in the room when he's asleep thing, is that these zombies are pretty pathetic.
They are.
They're
So
yeah.
I wasn't quite as like, I was sort of like, man, that's just not a cool thing to do to your friend. But then I'm like, yeah, but they're kind of lame zombies. So
Like they
uh,
don't move. They're really slow. They might like eventually come after you, but the scene at the motel where the two zombies come out of the car, out of the room, and like kind of stand around in front of that car for a while.
yeah, they're so slow as to be, which, Mickey is also sort of like, well, why do you need to even kill them? Look at them, they're pathetic. There's no reason. They're not really all that threatening.
Yeah,
They're just there. I mean, obviously they're a threat, but they're not a threat unless they're really up and close by, close enough to bite, I suppose.
yeah. But yeah, so Mickey does kind of, that's his baptism by blood. And before that scene, he's also there's this all this stuff with the radio, the walkie-talkies, which
Yeah.
so they don't run into too many other living, breathing people, and I guess they haven't seen anybody since they left this house in Pittsfield, which they refer to a lot or occasionally. And when they find some walkie-talkies and they're experimenting with those, and then they hear some other people out doing like a salvaging run, and so they try to establish a relationship with these people and try to hook up with them because they sound organized, but they are pretty quickly and immediately rebuffed and told, "Don't try to find us, and don't mess with us." One of the voices on the radio is a woman, and I guess apparently Mickey starts to like obsess about her a little bit.
Right. And actually, the conversation that Ben and Mickey have about her is also
That's pretty funny.
really funny because basically Ben's kind of like, I can't believe you're becoming obsessed with this person that you just heard on the walkie-talkie. Like, when you picture her, you're picturing her like this sort of pixie, like kind of badass, like person that you would see out of a video game with a scar, but not enough to make her not pretty. Like this, all he's like, I'm picturing like a 40-year-old gym teacher.
That's the woman they're gonna send out on the resource run, not the cheerleader.
Right. And so it's interesting because that's a definite difference in the way they're viewing this stuff. Because I don't get the sense that Ben really feels like they need to be saved. He's fine with how they are going along. And Mickey's continually looking for something, like some shred of civilization or some shred of the old life, which is, he definitely, whenever they go to houses, he's always like sitting in bedrooms and like kind of being like just very nostalgic, or I'm gonna just stay here and pretend like this isn't happening. And Ben's just like, this is just tiring.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving.
Yeah, and well, so also the night before the zombie wake up call with Mickey in the bedroom is he talks to Annie, the woman on the radio, and she says, "You're pathetic. Don't try to talk to me anymore."
Mm-hmm.
And those two things, that conversation and the baptism by blood thing, kind of changed the dynamic between them. Where before Mickey had spent all of his time with the headphones and not helping at all. Now he's kind of pitching in. He's doing a little fishing, and he's kind of come out of his shell. And so
Right.
that's
And it's definitely, you see a lot more of them working as a team as opposed to Ben just pretty much doing everything, which admittedly I was so frustrated with at the beginning of the film. I was just like, why? Why are you not helping at all? Um, but they obviously do care about each other, and um, the the whole as the film gets into the more, I think one of the most interesting parts of it, they've built up the relationship between Ben and Mickey to make the next parts of this film make a lot of sense and carry a lot of weight.
yeah. I mean, so eventually they find this car, and now they're doing a road trip as opposed to a hike. They still don't really have a destination in mind.
But it's a more pleasant relationship at this point, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, they're much more at ease with each other. Um, until we kind of end up in a situation. I guess we don't need to spoil this because I don't know. Or do you think like the interaction that they have with the people on the road is that important, or is it like where how they end up that's the more important?
It's a little bit how they end up, but I do think that the interaction is important in that this is, you know, they 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 basically realize that their relationship is the one that's important. That they can trust each other, but they can't really trust other people. And I think that's the most interesting part of this. And also, generally, Ben is just right all the time, or feels like he's right.
Yeah, I I kind of wish that these post zombocalypse storylines wouldn't necessarily always portray every stranger as a total dick. It's not doing us any favors for our actual dystopian future where we might need to trust in the kindness of strangers occasionally, but they're so infrequently portrayed, in this genre. It's a little bit disheartening.
I guess I can see that. Like, you would hope that they'd meet up with somebody that would share a can of tuna fish with them or something at some point.
They would just be like, "Oh my God, another living human being! Thank fuck, let's help each other."
Yeah, I could see
That's
that.
I don't know. Maybe it's just not enough drama. Like nobody cares about people getting along. So
But now I do want to talk about, like, I was pretty blown away by this next the piece of the movie that I think is the most interesting, which they eventually get stuck in a car.
yeah,
And the interactions between them, the way that it was filmed, I felt really was just interesting and well done. It could have been really tedious, and I don't think it was.
it,
And
I think it was borderline not tedious. If I can take a slightly different,
really,
yeah.
really, I really felt like this was, especially after seeing their interactions up until this point, I kept being like, what are they going to do? Um, and I really liked their interactions. I thought that the filming was done very well. But, it's okay. Yeah, like, you can disagree with me on that point.
There were moments where I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it's a sizable chunk of the movie that is now filmed in the back of a like a Volvo station wagon. Yeah, I don't know. Like they're in the station wagon for days. Things that I felt were missing from these days of this passage of time was where are they shitting?
Yes, but I don't really want to know that.
I'm sorry, but if you're gonna have two guys stuck in a car for several days, they're eating, they're drinking.
Sorry, I don't want to know.
No, I guess like you don't really want to see it, but you have to realize that this is something they need to be dealing with. What are they opening a door? That's not gonna happen.
True. I would imagine they have containers. They seem to have a lot of containers in the car.
And if I had a general criticism for this film, it's that, yes, they do have some changes of clothes, like they change shirts every so often, but their shirts are always still, I mean, they look sweaty and disheveled, but they don't look dirty.
Yeah, but they seem to pick up a lot of supplies from houses and things like that.
They do go through people's houses, but they're wearing the same, like, revolving wardrobe.
I guess I could see that.
Anyway, that's pretty minor and, like, not really necessarily adding to the storytelling. But I'm just like, you're stuck in a car for several days. That's what I'm wondering.
If you're going to watch this, you should pick it up or download it directly from their website, because that means that they get the direct support. And it's not that expensive. It's $5.
That is a great deal for this film, honestly.
It is. And I think it's worth watching. Honestly, I think it's worth watching more so than some other films that I have seen in the genre. I have to give kudos to Jeremy Gardner for this.
Yep. Who directed, produced, wrote, and starred in it. And was working on a new project, which I can't remember what the name of it was. But the guys, they're probably going to be around for a while, I assume, because this was a really good project.
Yeah, no, I was very appreciative of this, and it came out in 2012, but it's been making the rounds. So it's been in different festivals and stuff, and so I don't think it's too late to watch this. I think it's definitely something that hopefully will continue to gain followers, because I think it definitely deserves a look. And so I have to say, good job, guys.
Nice work. That about, I guess, wraps up our review. I think we've successfully not given too many spoilers, HA. We should pat ourselves in the back.
Yes, even though I wanted to, I just feel like if we do, it's going to just totally ruin it for people that haven't seen it. So
yeah, there's no point. The end of the movie is comment worthy in its own right, but we don't need to talk about it right now. So let's just say that maybe there'll be a battery 2. Who knows?
I don't know, but I would actually I don't really care what they make next. I would absolutely watch it just based on this film. So, but if you have thoughts about the battery or any other thoughts about things you'd like to see us to review on Reanimated, feel free to drop us a line at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep, where you can tweet at us at ReanimatedPcast on the Twitter.
And join us next week when we review Wasting Away, and we'll also be coming out at you with our usual zombie news and tidbits. But until then, have a very good week, and I will see you later. Ciao.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
And if you did drive into town, everyone would stand around and stare. The Harlem's girl would catch a glimpse in the mirror as she crimps her hair. Harlan's papa wouldn't stay in the ground, dead and buried, and he walked into town. Lord God, what is Ma to do? Mama's so mad 'cause she can't stand